This is High Voltage, your weekday news analysis show, where we review and analyze the news and also talk about the issues affecting us as citizens of Nigeria, ranging from politics to education to health and other topical stories making rounds in the country. Remember, you can join us live in the studio by calling in on 0706 048 5853 or 0915 570 8347. And we are live on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel on High Voltage News. Like, leave a comment, and share the video for others to be part of the conversation this morning. And please ensure that when you do calling, that your comments, they are very civil and very clean. I understand that there are some things we expect to be working in around us that are not really working the way we expect it. But please ensure that your comments are very clean. We are all civilized. All right, so this morning we'll be talking about the rising government debt and what it means for our economy, our communities, and even the future of our children. You see, every day we hear about borrowing, we hear about the deficit and the spendings. Sometimes it just feels like the numbers on a page, far removed from our daily lives. But then these numbers are not just figures. They affect the roads we drive on. They affect the schools our children attend, the hospitals we depend on, and even the electricity we pay for. What about the prices of food and fuel? It all affects the borrowing, it all affects it. So Nigeria is planning to borrow nearly 18 trillion naira in 2026. That's almost double the amount borrowed in 2025. So when we hear these numbers, when we hear the big numbers, it feels sometimes can feel just so abstract. But today we are going to look at it in simple terms so we can understand what it means. But before we do that, let's take a look at the top stories on today's papers. On the Punch newspaper, federal government opens diplomatic talks with Burkina Faso over detained aircrafts, soldiers. All right, let's see what's inside that. The federal government of Nigeria is intensifying diplomatic efforts to secure the release of Nigerian soldiers and a C-130 military aircraft currently held in Burkina Faso. The soldiers and the aircraft have been in detention for 3 days after being seized by the Burkina Faso military government, which claims that the aircraft violated its airspace. So officials from the Nigerian military confirmed that the matter is now being handled by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with hopes that intervention from the ministry will ensure the safe release of both the personnel and the aircraft. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have confirmed its involvement, with spokesperson Kimebe Ebianfa stating that Nigerian embassy in Ouagadougou is actively engaging Burkinabe authorities to resolve the situation. So reports indicate that the Nigerian aircraft carrying 11 soldiers, if you can recall, was forced to land in Bobo Dioulasso in Burkina Faso. So the Burkinabe authorities said that the aircraft did not have the power, the proper authorization to enter their airspace. And as a result of that, they've detained 11 of our soldiers. And the government is telling us that they are still in talks with them so that they will release our soldiers. So although we've been assured that they are safe, yes, the Nigerian Air Force said that these 11 personnel, they are safe and they are receiving cordial treatment. But we are still wondering why they are still in detention. It's been 3 days. and our soldiers are still there. So whatever they are doing, the talks they are doing should be fastened so they can release our soldiers. So as at now, they are still in detention. All right. So next on the newspaper, still on the Punch newspaper, Tinubu tackles VIP police escort abuse. Soyinka faults Sheyi's entourage. Okay, President Bola Tinubu has once again ordered that police officers be pulled from VIP protection and sent back to their main duties in communities and on the highways where they are supposed to be. The goal is to strengthen the security, especially with the recent rise in kidnappings, terrorism going on in the country. The president made the announcement at the Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja yesterday, that was yesterday, instructing the National Security Advisor and the Department of State Services to make sure that the order is fully implemented. Now, civil defense personnel can step in where needed, at least where if the VIPs need security, then these civil defense personnel can step in where the police are living. And also the forest guards will now be armed to boost the security in vulnerable areas. So the president is putting on a lot of efforts to ensure that we are safe in the country. We just expect to see it very soon, to see the results of what the president is doing. So this instruction, this reaffirmation by the president comes just after public criticism by Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka, who highlighted that the president's son, Sheyi Tinubu, has been moving around with a large security personnel. Soyinka stressed that the children of public officials should not inherit state security privileges that is left for the president, and not because you are a child of the president or a child of a politician, that guarantees you to move around with a lot of security when the rest of Nigerians are suffering the insecurity going on in the country. So as a result of what was highlighted, the president has made this reaffirmation that nobody, even the ministers, should not be seen with police escorts. So we are just looking around to see if this is what is going to happen. Since he has given the order, it's left for the implementation. It's left for the implementation. All right, so still on the President Tinubu also tasked Vice President Kashim Shettima to work with the National Economic Council to turn all the grazing reserves into ranches, aiming to reduce the farmer-herder conflicts and also to create the economic opportunities. The directive follows a similar order from about 3 weeks ago, meant to free up police manpower for schools, for highways, for community policing. Meanwhile, some lawmakers, including Senator Abdul Ningi, have protested what they see as selective enforcement. They are saying that some persons will enjoy full protection while they've been relieved of their own protection, and some people are still enjoying it. So with what the president has said yesterday, we are looking forward to know if it's going to be implemented. All right, next on the newspaper, on the Guardian newspaper, federal government arraigns Stella Odua, others on alleged 2.4 billion naira fraud. In Abuja yesterday, the federal government arraigned former Minister of Aviation Stella Odua and her co-defendant Gloria Odita before the Federal Capital Territory High Court in Maitama, that's Abuja. They are facing serious charges, including the alleged fraud, obtaining money by false pretense, and criminal breach of trust. And according to the court documents, the case goes back to January 2014. The two women are accused of conspiring to obtain over 2.4 billion naira from the Aviation Ministry through two companies. So two of them conspired. Allegedly, it is yet to be proven. All right, so it's based on the claims that the government says they were fraudulent, that they didn't use the right way to get the 2.4 billion naira. So the offenses fall under the Advanced Free Fraud Act, which carries stiff penalty if proven. During yesterday's proceedings, both defendants applied for bail. Odua's lawyer pointed out that she has voluntarily returned from the United States to face the courts and had previously been on administrative bail with the Economic and Financial Crime Commission. So the government, through the Attorney General, said it has no objection to granting bail, but it said that there's an importance of setting a firm date for the trial, reminding the court that the defendants were served as far back as November 27, 2025, and they were all fully aware of the process. So Justice Hamza granted Odua bail on self-recognition and ordered that both women deposit their passports so they won't be able to travel outside the country. So the judge has adjourned the trial to February 12th and 13th, 2026. So these are some of the things we expect, that when someone is being accused of something, of a crime, at least the person should be brought to court to be proved innocent or not. Because a lot of our politicians, a lot of the people in office have been, or out of office, have been accused of so many things that they did while they were in office. So yes, the court really needs to look into the matter and ensure that the right thing is done. All right, so next, still on the Guardian newspaper, Kanu lawyers petition Tinubu NSA over parallel Sharia body. So the National Forum of Kanu Indigenous Lawyers has raised concerns over the recruitment of a parallel Hisbah police force in Kano State. They are warning that it could destabilize the state for political reasons. All right, so in a petition to President Bola Tinubu and the National Security Advisor, the lawyer said that creating a private Hisbah group could threaten the delicate coexistence between the Muslims and the Christians in Kano State. They called for urgent intervention to prevent the potential security risk, because the person that's supposed to be policing has to be trained people and not just anybody. You can't just call anybody and harm them to go and be protecting the citizens. They need to be trained. Now, this is what they are talking about, because the recruitment, which took place over the weekend, was announced by the former Kano Road Transport Agency boss on behalf of the governor. He said that the initiative is meant to create jobs for 12,000 youths who lost employment due to the state-established Hisbah board, and insisted it has no political motive. But then this is just like bringing ordinary person, someone who has not been in this field before, in the security, just because you are trying to create jobs, 12,000 jobs. And as a result, you just get anybody. With all the insecurity going on in the north, with all this insecurity going on in Nigeria, when are we going to learn? Because now you hand them, you give them weapons to protect the people. And if they're not properly put in check, they can use that weapon against the people. So these are the things that the Kano lawyers are trying to protest. This is why they wrote a petition to the president and the National Security Advisor to look into the matter. And when we are talking about the Hisbah policy, we know who it ends up affecting, especially in Kano State. We've already talked about Sharia laws, the Ishba police here on the program. So it's really something that the president and the National Security Advisor needs to look into and ensure that it doesn't escalate from what it currently is. All right, so let's still look at let's see if there are other stories on the Guardian newspaper. All right, Human Rights Day 2025 concerns as Nigerians worsening rights crisis prompts call for reform. Obasanjo tasked leaders on stronger institutions for national development. Ekiti spent 49.7 billion naira to build cargo airport, says Oyebanji. All right, Nigeria's capital market losing $60 million to crypto and other virtual assets. All right, let's see if there's on the Daily Trust. We see 2027 defections heighten fear of single-party contests. Again, police withdrawal. Tinubu directs ministers to obtain clearance for escorts. Northern Governors Forum undertakes major reforms. Appoint first Director General. Rep summon Cardoso over unremitted 16.3 trillion naira. All right, and lastly on This Day newspaper, President talks tough, says police must protect vulnerable, not VIPs. Dangote Refinery raises in-country petrol supply by 5.5 million liters daily amid 11.48 million deficits. Turaki meets 29 state chairman, declares PDP set go and win Osun State, and Tinubu charges APC aspirants. All right, so these are the stories we have this morning on the newspaper. Remember, you can call in and let us know what you think on all that you've heard from all the newspaper, from the Punch to This Day newspaper. Your opinion, what are your comments? Join us on 0706 048 5853 or 0915 570 8347. Let us know what you think concerning the top stories on today's papers. But before we take our calls, before we take your calls, we are going to go on a short break. And when we return, yes, we'll open the phone line and also we will move into the story for the day. Don't go anywhere. This is High Voltage, your weekday news analysis show here on Volt 104.3 FM.
Welcome to the show and the presenter that won't stop giving it their all.
Hi, my name is Ogio, your pilot one, and I'm that has current affairs in her palms.
Everyone, my name is and I'm passing the mic to the judge and peacemaker in Volt FM Sports.
I am Godwin and I'm not controversial.
Monthly, afọ Mbanti Chinazọ, achọrọ m ịpas the mic to ofu onye ọ na-adị ekwe ekwe n'ihe John kwuru, mana ọ bụ ojembe enwe ilo.
Magic voice, and I'm like to one person when they give anything right at all.
Hi, family. My name is John, and I'm passing the mic to the driver. We know they collect fare, you know now.
Hi, neighbor. It's Jason here, and I'm passing the mic to the one that has the magic to heal your broken heart.
My name is Malaika, and I am passing the mic to you. Yes, you, for being part of
Gold 104.3 FM.
Welcome back to High Voltage on Volt 104.3 FM. This is your weekday news analysis show where we review and analyze the news and also talk about the stories affecting us as citizens of Nigeria. ranging from politics to education to health and other topical stories making rounds in the country. Remember that you can join us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel on High Voltage News. Like, leave a comment and share the video for others to be part of the conversation. And you can also join us live in the studio by calling in on 0706 048 5853 or 0915 570 8347. And please ensure that when you do call, that your comments are very clean and they are very civil. All right, this morning, if you're just joining us, we've gone through the newspaper headlines and we've talked about some of the things on the papers. And we are going to be diving in on what we have for this morning. We are talking about Nigeria borrowing 18 trillion naira in 2026. Because we need to look at it at what this really means for us, the citizens of Nigeria, what it means for our community, what it means for the future generations. What does it mean for them? Because when we look at the rate at which the government keeps borrowing, we wonder, as a nation, are we ever going to be able to repay all these debts? At what year? When are we going to repay all that we've been borrowing? So these are the things we are looking at. Now let's start with the basics. Next year, the government expects to collect about 29 trillion naira in revenue. That is down from 38 trillion naira this year. At the same time, the total government spending will remain very high, over 54 trillion naira. Over 54 trillion naira. The gap between what the government aims and what it spends is what we are looking at. Because it seems like the government is spending a lot. There's a lot of deficits in our government today. There's a lot of it. For 2026, the deficit is projected at about 20 trillion naira. Now we keep calling the money, it looks so big. And it is so big. 20 trillion naira, that is the deficit projected for 2026. And it's a very large number. And it means that the government will have to borrow money just to cover its spending. They will have to keep borrowing to keep covering whatever it is they're spending the money on. So even though the deficit is large, it is expected to be slightly smaller as a share of the economy. Because Nigeria's GDP is projected to grow, but the deficit is still big enough to require the borrowing. And borrowing comes with its own costs and risks. Because it doesn't come free. It doesn't come free at all. So when you are borrowing, there are things that are associated with it. The reality is that borrowing money is not just an accounting exercise. It's not just something you go to the bank and they just exercise, and it affects how much money the government can spend on development. It affects how much money the government can spend on the infrastructures, in building roads, schools, hospitals, name it, in the country. So it also affects how much interest the government is going to pay. Because we don't borrow without interest. And for as long as we've known, Nigeria has been borrowing. So there's a lot of debt in the country. And it's also the how much investment is going to make in the projects whether it's going to improve our lives or not in 2026. That is what we are looking at this morning. Because most of the 18 trillion naira will come from domestic sources, the local banks and investors in Nigeria, while about 14 trillion naira will be borrowed locally. the 3.5 trillion will come from foreign lenders. So some of this money are coming from within the country, right? Some of them from outside the country. But does it really change anything? Because this is not a new pattern. This is not it. In just this year, domestic borrowing made up 82% of total new loans of the country. Now in 2026, the pattern is going to continue. It's going to continue with about 80% coming from the local sources and 20% from abroad, from outside the country. This same structure is planned for 2027 and 2028. So it's just like year in, year out, this is what we keep facing as a country. We borrow, whether we pay back, we do not know. But what we keep hearing is that the government is going to borrow, the government is going to take a loan for so, this and that, for this project, for this year's budget. So there's a lot of borrowing that the government is doing. And when we look at this, borrowing heavily from domestic sources, it can have its own benefits. It can have its own risk. And the benefit that I know is that it is easier to access because it's from within the country. It's easier to access and it may be more predictable. But then the risk is that it can raise interest rates in the country. For you and I, it raises the interest rates in the country. Banks may have to prefer to lend to the government because they feel it is safer, leaving fewer loans available for businesses and the individuals. So when we look at this, whatever it is that the government is planning to do in 2026 that has to do with borrowing, it's affecting us, it's affecting the communities, it's affecting our children. So it's not just the government, it's affecting the nation as a country. So it leaves us wondering why the country keeps borrowing, even with the president saying that we met our revenue for the year 2025. And then we are still borrowing. And when you also look at it, we are not just borrowing from within, we're also borrowing from outside the country. And it has its own risk as well. The exchange rate charges, it can make the repayment more expensive. If the Naira weakens, Nigeria could end up paying much more than planned in the initial stages because of the foreign currency and all that. So now the governments are going to, next year, they are going to focus on building more, the projects that was left this year. So there's likely not going to be any new projects. But just the one that they planned for 2025, that's what they're going to move to 2026. Because the government, because there's no money in the country, because there's a lot that the government is owing. So at this rate, what do you think about all the borrowings from the federal government? Join the conversation on 0706 048 5853 or 0915 570 8347. I'll take that again, 0706 048 5853 or 0915 570 8347. Call us and let us know what you think. And also you can drop a comment on our YouTube channel on High Voltage News. Like, drop your comment and share the video for others to be part of the conversation. Because when we look around the borrowing of a thing, we see that it is not free. It is not free. Because the government must pay the interest, both the interest and the principal on its loans. In 2026, nearly half of government revenue, that's about 45%, we go in paying the debt that the government has been owing. So it feels like we borrow to pay. We keep borrowing to be paying, and then there's little or nothing left to build hospitals, to build the roads, to build the schools. That's why you go to different states. The schools are in bad shape. You go to hospitals, there are no equipments. You go around, you just move around, you are asking yourself, is this the same country that is the giant of Africa? Is this the same country that is rich in resources? We have brilliant minds. We have a lot of resources as a country, but then we hardly see it. In our economy, we don't see it. In the projects, we hardly see it. People can barely, in the individual lives, people can barely survive. People can barely eat. Talk more of sending their children to school because of the state of the economy. Because of where we found ourselves in as citizens of Nigeria. And then every year, the governments are planning to keep borrowing money from within and outside the country. Now, this has a lot of negative effects on us. It has a lot of it. The government needs to cut down on the way that they borrow, on the way that they collect loans. They really need to look into it, look for other ways to generate money for the country. Instead of accruing the interest. Because as you pay, you also pay back the interest rates. You pay for the charges. You pay for all this. And then you end up, your mind is just to ensure that the ones that you borrowed, you are paying back. And then not on developing the states, not on developing the country. That's why we have in many states, we have so many underdeveloped in the locations around us. So many places are underdeveloped. And we are wondering when the government will step in and start developing those places. We look at the rate at which insecurity is going on. It is as a result of underdevelopment in the country. If the government can channel their energies, the money, the funds, to ensure that the places around us, that we don't have, why they are trying to arm the forest guards. If there were major development in most of these places, we wouldn't have a lot of forests. We won't have a lot of hideouts for the kidnappers, for the terrorists. But because we do not know how the money is being spent, look at the amount of money they are calling for people that they are probing. NNPCL, the former Minister of Aviation, all of them. Malami that has been in EFCC custody. Because they just get money. They collect loan. They fund it to a particular person or group of persons. And there's nothing, no accountability. There's no way to figure out how this money was spent. Who spent it? Where it was spent on? And then the next thing we hear is that the government wants to borrow again. So it's just like a cycle. It keeps repeating itself. But why we keep quiet, it is affecting us. Yes. Because we are the Nigerians. In one way or the other, we are going to be paying for all these loans that the governments are collecting. Look at all the tax that is being imposed on the citizens. On a good day, we are going to be talking about the tax to look at how it affects the citizens. In 2026, there are going to be a lot of tax on businesses, on individuals. So in one way or the other, we are paying for all this borrowing that the government are doing. We are paying for the loans that they are collecting. So it affects us. It's part of the reason that we need to talk, speak up on this. So because it is an issue that concerns every one of us. It's an issue that concerns the future of our children. Should we just keep quiet and watch the government do what they want to do, the way that they want to do it? Because we believe that there are better ways that the government can go about generating money for the country. We have a lot of oil, and there are also the non-oil sources that they can get money from. But then we look at it. The tax is a lot. But then we don't see, even while they collect the tax, we hardly see it we hardly see what they do with it. Because when a citizen pays tax, the reason is to see it in our own lives. Yes, to see that things are getting better, to see that the government are using it to build more hospitals, to build more roads. Look at the roads. There are so many accidents going on because most of the roads are in bad shape. There are so many people going to hospitals and they are dying in hospitals because of resources, limited resources. Manpower limited. The equipments are limited. You go to hospitals, you just have few doctors that can attend to a lot of persons. No recruitment. Unions are going on strike because they are not being treated well, because they are not being paid well. So where exactly is all the borrowing, the loans, where are they going? This is really a question that we need to sit and ask ourselves. Where is it going? It's not going into manpower, it's not going into equipment, infrastructure. So why do they keep borrowing every now and then? Because we need to think about that for a moment. You really need to sit and think about it. Because with the rate that the country is going, we might get to a point where we might not be able to pay for all the loans that we've been collecting. Because whether you like it or not, you might say that it is the government that are collecting it. But you need to know that it is Nigerians that are collecting the loan. So we are citizens, we are part of it. So when it comes to paying back, we are going to pay back the loans. That is why we are asking the government to take it easy on the way that they collect all these loans. They really need to. Because the way it doesn't really seem very right. It doesn't seem, because like I said, borrowing is not free. The government must pay both the interest and the principal on its loans. So in this 2026, nearly half of government revenue, nearly half of it will go to just paying debts. And by 2027, this could rise above 50%. This could rise above 50%. That is nearly 1 naira out of every 2 naira collected by a government will be going to paying off the debts that has been owed over the years. Now that leaves less money for, like I've been saying, for all these schools, for all these hospitals, for the roads, for the electricity, for the services that Nigerians rely on every day. Because the government will be focusing on paying back all the loans that they've been collecting. So now, even if the total spending drops slightly in 2026, most of it will still go to salaries. Most of it will still go to debt payments. because the government still has salaries to pay. So this leaves the little room for new investments or all this emergency spending. So this plan to borrow 18 trillion naira in 2026 is really something they need to review. Now they will give us reasons why the country needs the loan. But we need to get experts, economic experts who can turn around the country, who can sit and analyze what the country really needs economically and find solution to the problem of the country. And it's not to keep borrowing. That is not the solution. That is like causing more problems on the already existing ones. So governments needs to ensure that whatever decision that they are making will affect the citizens in a positive way. We need to see more schools. We need to see more projects. We need to see all this in 2026. We really need it from the government. Because all these spendings on capital projects like the roads, the bridges, the hospitals is expected from all the loans is expected to fall from 26 trillion naira in 2025 to 22 trillion naira in 2026. And a large part of this is because the ministries are rolling over the projects from 2025 rather than requesting for fresh approvals. Because truth be told, you need to finish up the ones that you've already approved before starting to look for another one. So the issue of paying off the loans, paying off the debts that has been owed by the government is going to limit a lot of things in 2026. So the government really needs to do better when it comes to planning in the economic state of the country. They need to do better. They shouldn't subject every one of us to suffering. They shouldn't subject Nigerians to more hardship. So this is what we had to look into this morning. Because when I saw the headline, I was like, again, borrowing money again in 2026. When is it going to end? When exactly? Who is going to change the narrative in this country? Because the more we keep doing that, the more it feels like we become slaves to those people who are giving us the money. Whenever we ask the World Bank, they approve and give us. So there has to be a different narrative in the country. The government really needs to do a lot more better than keep borrowing and using the one borrowed to repay the debt and still owing a lot of money in the country. Nigeria is not poor. We are rich in resources. They need to make use of it. The agricultural resources, the mineral resources. The government needs to make proper good use of it, maximize it. Yes, maximize what we have. Because a lot of people are leaving the country to come into our own country, to see what we have and to make use of it. Why can't our eyes be opened to see what we really have and make good use of it? We can generate a lot of money from all the resources that we have in the country instead of borrowing. I would have loved to continue going further on what we have, on what we are talking about, on the issue of borrowing and how it affects us. But because of time, this is where I'll be stopping this morning. But I promise you that we are going to come back to this topic again. We are going to look deeper into it because we cannot keep quiet. Yes, this is High Voltage, your weekday news analysis show. from Mondays to Fridays, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. here on Volt 104.3 FM. Thank you for being part of the program. Thank you for joining the show. Join us again tomorrow by 9 a.m. for more of the news, for more of the analysis and the headlines. And until then, keep hoping for a better Nigeria. My name is Odele. Have a wonderful day ahead.